So we were fully acclimatized.
And we're like, all right, if it rains or the conditions are really crappy, we're not going to continue. Sure as not.
We were about, I don't know, maybe 100 meters from the summit.
Something ridiculous.
I mean, we were so close, and it started raining. And, when it comes down in the tropics. So we just turned around and we started running back. So we've been up there so many times and used this mountain. We've never summited it.
And then with the guide that you're with, is he with you the whole time?
No, that was without the guide. We never were with the guide on this particular mountain.
So he just sent you off and said, like, okay, you can take the gondola up, and then you're gonna be.
No. We always did that before we even met him.
Oh, okay.
I had a question about the gondola. Yeah. Was that a suggested trick, or did you come up with that idea?
No, we came up with it ourselves.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. First time I've heard of something like that.
Yeah, so just researching like stuff to do.
Things to do around the city. I'm like, oh my God, we can take this gondola up to 13.5.
And puke.
Yeah, I know. We got up there the first time and, he's walking and he does much better at altitude than I do. And I'm behind him like, oh my God, I think.
It's really amazing, if you have not experienced that, it's a really, but we know when you go to different places and you're at altitude, we just know what to expect.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
Stomp, I'm cracking my beer, episode 93. Welcome.
How's your week?
It's been busy.
Oh yeah?
Just working. But I wanted to start off, Stomp, I found, for the show opener, I found a heartwarming story for you to hear about here.
Is it part of your Hallmark series?
It's not a Hallmark. It's more like a Friday the 13th. So you know how catalytic converters we've been seeing people get those stolen quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I was poking around the internet. I don't know if it was today or yesterday. There's a group called the Darwin Award, and I found this article in I think it was a subreddit dedicated to the Darwin Award. So a man who authorities say was trying to steal a catalytic converter from a truck in Palmdale, California, is dead after being run over by the driver of that truck.
The driver? Oh, what was it, like just a rash reaction? Did he discover him sawing off the catalytic?
Authorities say a car with 4 suspects inside pulled up to a lifted 4x4 Ford Excursion. One of them got out of the car with a saw, got under the vehicle to take off the catalytic converter. A woman was sleeping inside the truck, heard the noise, thought somebody was breaking in, started the engine because she panicked, put the car in reverse. When she felt the bump, she then got out and called 911.
Wow, that's intense.
Deputies responded. They ended up detaining the other 3 suspects, and the suspect was pronounced dead. Wow. So,
karma.
That was a bumpy ride.
I know that that is a bumpy ride. So I know, Stomp, that we said that we were not going to fearmonger, but I think we should fearmonger catalytic converter thieves. So just remember, if you're going to be climbing under a vehicle, especially at a trailhead in the White Mountains, you never know if somebody's sleeping in their car and is going to panic and back over you.
That's true. Wow.
Yes.
Words to live by.
Yes.
You're all primed up with some dad jokes tonight, aren't you? This is great.
That's his usual state.
Chris and Tracy are here, so we'll introduce them in a moment. But Stomp, one other thing I wanted to give you a heads up on. I woke up this morning and I was so excited. I was flipping through TikTok and there was a young lady that had posted a story. You know how all these balloons and unidentified flying objects have been getting shot down?
Oh, sure.
So excited. She reported, this is literally the first thing I looked at this morning. This girl reported she had a video that had 50,000 views already on it. And she said a UFO had been shot down near Keene, New Hampshire. Reports are that the debris had fallen somewhere in Swansea, which is, I guess, Swansea's directly south of Keene. So I got very excited. The lady pronounced Swansea like Swansea, so she was clearly not from New Hampshire. So my antenna went up a little bit. So I immediately go to a bunch of different news sources and type in like New Hampshire, UFO shot down, whatever. I can't find any news stories. So sure enough, I checked back like 6 hours later and there's no confirmation on any of this. So I was so excited for you guys that you're going to have your very first UFO shoot down, but apparently it was a false news. No, I went back to the girl and she did have another video where she was like, everybody came for me and I apologize, but I have sources that have sent me pictures assuring me that something was shot down overnight on or around Keene, New Hampshire. So
I would have heard about that.
I'll keep an eye on the story.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was wondering why they canceled that hot air balloon ride I tried to get for Tracy.
Yeah. Yes.
It's probably not a good time to go on these balloon rides.
Maybe that's why he's booking it for me.
He's increasing your life insurance policy and sending you on a balloon ride.
Get in touch with herself solo.
Yes. All right. So anyway, we've got the catalytic converter guy getting run over. We've got the false story about UFOs. And then I did have an uplifting story, Stomp, about hiking. So I'll talk a little bit more about the trip that we did over the weekend on the Twins and Galehead, but ran into a guy on South Twin that was breaking out. I think he came up from Zealand and went over to Guyot and then was up on South Twin. Just had a quick conversation with him. And then he was heading on his way. There was 4 of us. One of the guys I was hiking with had fallen between North and South Twin. And apparently, none of us noticed, but he lost his outdoor research, big mitt. And luckily, I had put a trip report in the New England trail conditions with my email address.
Right.
The guy that we met on South Twin, his name is Ron. He's friends with Keith Gentili.
Oh, Keith, the author.
Yeah. And I guess Keith had mentioned him on the show because he emailed me and he was like, oh, I didn't know it was you, but I'm friends with Keith. So the good news is what ended up happening was he was like, I found this glove halfway between South and North Twin, and I wanted to check to see if it was your group. And sure enough, it was my friend Peter who was with us. He had lost his glove, so Ron is going to ship it back to him. So reason I tell this story is as a reminder, there is a lost and found group on Facebook for the White Mountains, but when you put a trail report up on the New England trail conditions, you also put your email in there. People can track you down if things are lost that way. So another benefit for putting in the trail reports.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was an uplifting story.
Yeah, it sure was. We need Keith back in sometime soon too to cover Arcadia. Have you guys ever been to Arcadia? You have.
In Maine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice place.
Yeah. Used to go up there pretty much once a year, and then Chris and I went up with my kids and
their
my first visit.
others. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, we plan to do a full show on it with Keith, actually.
Yeah, Stomp, we may need to book a weekend, me and you, just for research purposes before that show.
Yeah, that'd be great. But we always say that. I think you and I are lucky to get out once a year, it seems.
Well, I mean, once every couple of months, maybe. But
yeah.
All right. So next up here, Stomp, you said you pulled this one. I don't know anything about this, so I'm going to have to rely on you to sort of break this down. But Tenny Mountain is opening to skiing?
Yeah, Tenny Mountain is in Plymouth. It's off of Tenny Mountain, or Tenny, is it Tenny Road? Tenny Road, I guess?
Tenny Mountain Road.
Tenny Mountain Road, okay. So this mountain's been around forever. When I was snowboarding back in the day, back in the 80s, it was around and it was fully operational. Then it closed down for the past few decades. But the good news is good news for some, not so much for others. It's open again. It was open the weekend of the 10th, I believe, and they're fully operational, blowing snow and everything. So it's a nice little boost for the area. The only people that are pissed off about it are the backcountry skiers, and I totally get it. The trails are still there. They were fairly safe to just backcountry ski, and you could always get deep powder when storms came rolling through. So it was a lot of fun. But that seems to be the only crowd that is complaining at the moment. But just so you know, it's open. SkiTenny.com.
Very good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever been to that one. When I was a kid, we would go to Sunapee, and I think I learned at Sunapee and Gunstock and then Waterville Valley, but I never went to Tenny when it was open back then. So maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah, that's definitely worth it. They have some challenging trails, a couple steep ones for sure.
I read that somebody was saying they were like, oh, it's the fall line on it is not good and it's too difficult or something. And somebody else was like, no, it's not. So it was some argument I read online about it. Very good. All right. And then next here, Stomp, we have an article out of Leominster, Mass. There was a report of somebody was hiking and they heard somebody yelling for help, or they thought they heard somebody yelling for help. And it caused a big search and rescue effort in Leominster, or maybe not a big one, but a search and rescue effort. And nobody was found. So they don't know if it was a hiker or an alien, right?
A bobcat or a lost hiker. I mean, apparently bobcats sound like that.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
You've heard of that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've personally heard that myself, just bushwhacking over the years.
Raccoons can make a god-awful noise too, like a crying, screaming.
Huh.
Yeah, I've heard that in the trees as well. Interesting.
Yeah. I pulled that one up, Mike, because it was in Mass, right?
I appreciate it.
Yeah, there you go.
Appreciate it. I don't want to put two and two together, but I'm just looking at a map right here, and Keene and Swansea, and then you go a little bit south and it's pretty close to Leominster. So something could be going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the cats are around, that's for sure. I mean, we're getting more sightings up here. So.
All right. And then next up here, we have a reminder for the listeners that shoulder season is approaching, and you want to start thinking about what you need to do to prepare. I think for me, the biggest thing is continuing to bring my spikes with me. I will typically switch over from boots to trail runners with the understanding that my feet are going to get wet and I just accept it. And then I'll look to switch out my backpack. And, I think with shoulder season, if you're going to go up high, then, you got to bring your snowshoes. This is the time of the year where I start thinking about going to the Belknaps or the Ossipee range in April and May to kind of avoid that gross stuff.
Sure. Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, for me, spikes, absolutely, because you never know when you're going to run into some ice and stuff like that. But post holing is a big one too, because if you're walking on deeper snow and then you fall through, you can certainly hurt your ankle, hurt your leg, or any other part for that matter. So just be aware of that. And of course, you're still dealing with wintry conditions up above well into the next month or two, even into early June. So keep your cold gear with you for the next several weeks for sure. It's not time to ditch that stuff.
No, I'm sure we're due for some more snow.
Oh, yeah. By the way, 8 inches for next week.
Oh, see?
Crazy
Perfect.
winter. It's been an absolutely crazy winter.
Yeah.
Will that be enough to get you guys going back on the trails for snowmobiling?
Yeah. Yes, it could be. Yep. So, yeah, they need a 6-inch foundation, assuming that the intermittent rain in between these douses of snow don't damp it down, then, yeah, we'll be good to go. They were hoping to get through the vacation weeks, but that's not going to happen. They've essentially closed down, with this company anyway, until the 3rd of March. But it could be next weekend if it comes to fruition.
Did they leave the trails open?
Trails are open. That's a weird thing. I mean, so you'll see people out there, despite the fact that the New Hampshire Trail Association will say trails are closed. So a lot of the clubs you can log on to, and they will post which trails are open, which are closed, but they definitely tell you when they're closed. And if you're out there, then that's not the coolest thing, because then you're dealing with environmental impact too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we walked out on Gale River Road, and there was it was kind of funny because like Jake, for whatever reason, he's like the snowmobile whisperer, because I couldn't hear anything because we were wearing snowshoes. So all you can hear is the crunching of snowshoes. But Jake, for whatever reason, he was like, he would put his hand up and be like, "There's a snowmobile coming by," and we would all like, one of them came around the corner pretty fast, and we all sort of ditched off to the side. But the road was groomed. But I don't know what the minimum. It didn't seem like it was that much depth to it.
No, not at all. Like there's one section right now that was showing grass, and when you're crossing some of the bridges, like wooden bridges, say going out to like Cherry Pond, it gets dangerous. So there are a lot of other obstacles, the water bars, you name it. So, yeah.
Well, we'll pray for snow for you.
Thank you, Father.
Anything else for shoulder season to think of, Stomp?
Shoulder season. How about you two, Chris, Tracy?
What about it?
Shoulder season. What to prepare with? Any tips or pointers? Or
I'm sure we have our spikes into June.
Yeah.
Just looking at trail reports and just from experience going up there and
sure,
keeping the winter gear in the bag.
Yeah. Now, when you say trail reports, you mean what? Like New England?
New England, yeah.
Okay, that's a great resource, actually. So newenglandtrailconditions.com. You can, look into the several surrounding states, but there's a great New Hampshire section, and people post their hikes pretty much the day after they hike or that afternoon, and give a nice update.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say is if you are putting reports on, especially this time of the year, I can't remember somebody had written a reminder on like one of the social media groups, but don't just do the trails that you hiked. Keep an eye out for the crossing trails and include those in your report so that you say like, okay, like I went across like Garfield Ridge, like we took Gale River down, but I looked over at Garfield Ridge and you could see that like that trail was broken out there. So, I usually will include those cross trails as well, just to give people a heads up.
So when you put in there that it's open, it looked like it was broken out and somebody only went down there 10 feet.
Yeah, I know. That does happen. So that does happen a lot, actually, because people will be like, oh, let me go down a little bit and I'll use I'll take a bio break, and then, somebody gets excited it's broken out and they're in for a miserable day. So sorry. All right, Stomp, you got a couple of articles here on the 10 essentials. I think that we've already covered one of these. There was like a research study that did, that they covered in Monadnock about like, how useful the 10 essentials are and whether or not you use them. And I think there was some survey done with like 900 hikers. And basically, I think that this article just said that like you don't use the 10 essentials that much. But I don't know, Stump, what your angle was here on it. I have some thoughts, but I'll let you kick it off.
Well, this is, it starts off with a backpacker.com story about the gear, and it says 10 essentials less important than you think. And what's funny about this link here, I just came across it doing some research for the show. And what's great about this is it's a thread of hikers just commenting on the article. So that's what makes it great. It takes it outside of the academic realm and it puts it into the hiker realm. And some of the comments are hilarious and people come up with some really good input. So we'll give you the link and you can check it out. It's a mega thread essentially of comments.
Yeah, and I think with my perspective on this is that you're not going to use, like I've had these like waterproof matches in my in my first aid kit for, I should probably actually see if they still work. I'm assuming they do. And I have a lighter too, but like I've had this stuff in, like I've got like gauze that's probably like 6-7 years old. Yes. You're not going to use it. Like if you're doing things right on trail, you're never going to use these 10 essentials you'll use your headlamp and whatever. But it's just, think of it like an insurance policy. There's 3 things. One is you may use it. The other is you may run into somebody that needs to use some of the stuff. The third scenario is that, they're cracking beers right now. The third scenario is that you get involved in a search and rescue, and you can at least show the fish and game people that you've got your stuff with you, and they're going to give you Mike McLaughlin was well prepared in the article, right? That's all if that ever happens to you.
And that's where they leave it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, that's too funny.
And then I'll also throw in this reminder, like from my perspective, as far as data goes, I think there's we said there was 54. So I think that almost half of the search and rescue events that happen in the whites are related to lower leg injuries. I think that's a good enough endorsement to think about bringing a splint along and including like a splint in that like gauze wrap or whatever that wrap is called, Stomp, just so you can stabilize an injury.
Yeah, ACE wrap.
ACE wrap.
Oh.
Okay. And next up, Stomp, you want to plug the Golden Gators Award.
Yeah, time's running out. You can submit your votes to our SLASR's first annual Golden Gator Awards, which is on March 10th, that Friday episode. And basically it's just voting for your favorites, favorite trail, favorite peak, favorite influencer, favorite gear, you name it. There's 50 plus categories, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll keep it up for like another week and then close it down. But yeah, get your votes in. Quite a big response so far. Definitely some trends that you may be surprised about.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the data probably this week. I have like a nice pair of outdoor research gators. I think they're called crocodiles or something. But I also bought, and my daughter uses them, but I bought a pair of like Amazon gators. They're like nylon raincoat material. They're pretty good. I used them for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
If I spray paint those gold, Stomp, do you want them? And you can like use those as like the handout to the big winner.
That sounds awesome.
You can take a picture of yourself in them.
Are we wearing a bow tie, like a suit and bow tie for this event?
No. You can get one of those T-shirts that has the tuxedo in the front.
Okay, watch out. Here comes Will Smith.
Yeah. Oh, no. None of that.
Yeah, that would be good, huh?
Yeah. All right. So moving on to pop culture talk here, Stomp. So Raquel Welch has passed away as of today. She was 82 years old. She was a big sex symbol.
Just came across the wires. Yeah, just about an hour ago. That's a shame. I remember as a kid seeing her image, and she was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But the one I remember is 1 million years BC. And of course, as a little kid, I was so into like the dinosaurs and all that stuff. So that's my memory of Raquel. But rest in peace, Chris. You must have some memories of Raquel Welch.
I can't talk about it now.
Oh, jeez.
He did change the rating to explicit.
Non-disclosure agreement. That's true.
I'm the old guy here.
We're not too far behind you, but I'm pretty sure that like one of my friends had like her, the iconic pose of her in 1 million BC,
right?
As a poster in his room. Like most of us had the Farrah Fawcett, but I think he had the Raquel Welch poster. So
did it like glow under a blue light or black light or anything like that?
It was probably stuck to his wall with thumbtacks like the rest of us.
Oh, well.
All right, so next up, I don't know anything about this. PewDiePie deep dives video generated by AI. I don't know who PewDiePie is.
You don't know who PewDiePie is?
No, I don't.
Wow. You guys know who PewDiePie is? Oh, my goodness.
Idea.
I know because my daughters were crazy about him. And he was the biggest influencer on YouTube. And he still is. He was overtaken by a gigantic corporation from India in terms of views and whatnot. So a couple of years back, there was this gigantic race to get to 1 billion views or whatever it was. But anyway, long story short, he put out a video and he goes over like all these new AI platforms for video and audio, and he plugs in some of the funniest content you'll ever see. It's really hilarious. You know, he puts a personal picture up into this platform, erases his face or erases his pet's face, and asks the AI to put another individual in there or some other content. And some of the results were just absolutely hilarious. It's a great video. So well worth the 10 or 15 minutes.
Piqued my interest.
It's
I'll have
great.
to ask my kids too, because my daughters probably know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, growing up with my daughters, I got into a whole bunch of funny stuff that they were into. I've sort of lost touch with that now. I mean, they're all into like K-pop and all this other crazy stuff. So, but anyway, back in the day, PewDiePie was all the rage.
Yeah, I think I was just looking it up while you were talking. So, Mr. Beast is the big one that overtook PewDiePie, whatever his name is. So, Mr. Beast is this guy that goes around, and I don't know that much about him, but my daughters do watch it, and I think he seems like he's this guy that goes around and gives away money. They did a big, like they rented out a mall. The one episode I've seen of Mr. Beast, and I'll link this in the show notes. They rented out a mall, and then I think they had like 100 people. They gave them a suitcase with like $10,000 each, and then they had to hide in the mall. And then Mr. Beast had like 10 of his friends like had to find them, and then the last person would win the $10,000. So it was kind of funny. They're all hiding in like video game cabinets and stuff like that. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I wonder how these people start out. Do they start out without any financial backing? Because I know once you get rolling, I mean, you can certainly pull in a lot of income doing these things.
I'm in the wrong line of work.
I don't know, though. I mean, I think it's sort of like getting hit by lightning, blowing up like this. Matter of fact, I have an article that we'll finish up at the end of the show that talks about these influencers that were involved in sort of hiking, and they ended up dying. So we'll talk about that. It's another uplifting story.
Yes, we're all about the uplifting stories.
You're full of them, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So this next one here, for sticking with pop culture, and then we're going to wrap it up, is Your Honor with Bryan Cranston. So this is the guy that played Walter in Breaking Bad. He's got a new show. Stop. What is this on?
Well, this is season 2. It's Showtime, and the first season was absolutely amazing. Great writing. The acting was phenomenal. It's they come up with novel ideas, and the breadth and the scope of the show is just really fantastic. But are you guys watching that at all?
We have not watched that.
Okay, it's you got to see it. I mean, it's just fantastic. So second season just came out, and it's pretty much surpassing the awesomeness of the first season. So highly recommended. I mean, Bryan Cranston's just awesome anyway. He's an incredible actor.
We're a huge Yellowstone.
Oh, where is that on break or something?
Oh, they're doing some weird thing now where they stopped it and they're only airing an episode every week. I'm like, it's gone back to like network TV where you got to wait a week.
Yeah, how can you binge?
Yeah.
You can't. Right. I got mad. I'm like, what are we watching this for? I can't sit here and watch it all day.
Some of us have to work anyways.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Retired. Yes. Anyway, so check it out.
I have a recommendation for a series. I just watched Willow on Disney Plus, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's kind of a brainless fantasy type of show, but I liked it.
Yeah,
8 episodes.
That's a revamp of the old one with Tom Cruise.
It's based on the movie that George Lucas was the producer, Val Kilmer. It's a pretty good 80s fantasy movie.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking something different. Wasn't Tom Cruise in that one?
I don't think so, no.
No?
No.
Something similar. Oh, well.
Yeah. All right. And then you got here something, McDonald's did something. They had to answer for their crimes. I
just had to add this. This doesn't belong in this section, but it's hilarious. It says, McDonald's withdraws tasteless, quote unquote, advert near a crematorium. So basically, McDonald's has apologized after an advertisement for the fast food chain's McCrispy Burger was placed close to a crematorium in the UK. Also, although some locals did see the funny side. That's just a great story. I just love that.
I heard that on the radio this morning, and I thought it was kind of hysterical, to be honest.
McCrispy. So, yeah, there you go.
All right, and then last bullet point here, you got something about the national anthem. You noticed the singer during the national anthem?
Yeah, well, first of all, did anybody watch that game? I sort of partially watched it, the Super Bowl. Did you see it, Mike?
I did, yeah. I watched it with me and Mrs. Mike watched it, and it was a good game.
Yeah, I heard it was okay up until the end. Like it just sort of flatlined at the end. I don't know. I'm not a big football guy.
Well, they had a weird call, and then it was just like anticlimactic. It was just a field goal to win the game. I mean, I guess that's exciting. They can miss the field goal, but it was like a chip shot. Yeah,
gotcha. Well, during the national anthem, the actor from Coda, which won best, I think it was a best whatever last year at the Oscars, and it stands for children of deaf adults, and it's an incredible story. It was filmed up in Gloucester. It's one of those movies that at one point it just absolutely breaks your heart, and then after that it breaks your heart like another dozen times. I've never seen anything quite like it. It's a beautiful story. So I was so thrilled to see this guy signing during the national anthem. He's one of the actors that are in the movie, so it was just neat. Little takeaway there for you.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to sponsors, Stomp.
Yes, we have our first sponsor of the night, and that is Sweet Beginnings Daycare. It's a New Hampshire state licensed child care provider that offers care for children from 6 weeks to 12 years with flexibility in before and after school care as well. Sweet Beginnings aims to instill a love for learning by providing a safe and positive experience within a loving and warm environment. Sweet Beginnings believes this is a good foundation to teach children in order to prepare them for their future. For more information, contact Sweet Beginnings at 603-568-4530 or Sweet Beginnings Daycare on Facebook, or email Shandy at shandyelliott@outlook.com. And if anybody's looking for stickers, we have them at Ski Fanatics, which is just right here in Campton at exit 28. You can stop in and grab some, or if you're in the
Spinners.
If you're in the Andover area off of Dascom Road, Spinners Pizza Parlor. That's Chris and Tracy. Have you been there, Tracy?
Yes,
both
we
of
were
you
both.
guys.
Yeah.
Stop in and see Dolls and Pops.
Dolls and Pops. Go get your stickers. Your stickers.
We make our way all over the place.
It's so awesome. No, that was so cool when you guys did that. They were thrilled, and it's just really neat. And so we have one donation. Stacy Tardif donated 5 coffees for us after the Jack Daly big cat joke about being a cougar, I guess it was. A cultural reference with Jack Daly. So that was really clever. And thank you, Stacy.
Remember, I was nervous. I'm like, maybe we should pull that. I don't know if that's appropriate.
I mean, honestly,
it was appropriate.
I mean, it was, I don't hear those phrases anymore, but there was a time in the culture where people were saying that stuff all the time, and it was a big joke and whatever. It was fine.
I have my human resources hat on sometimes.
Yeah. No, I get it totally.
Downer Mike, sorry.
No, it's always good to check me anyway.
True. All right, so welcome to episode 93 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we will be doing a review of a recent winter hike on the Twins and Galehead that I did. And then, so we'll break down the route, the trail conditions, and the crowd to give you a sense of what's going on out there in winter hiking. And then later in the show, we are welcoming Captain, Chris, and Lil Squirt. Chris and Tracy. Is that how I say it? Lil Squirt?
Oh, Lil.
Is that your rap name?
Lil. Yeah. Somehow I got banned from my previous trail name of Captain Morgan because I was told there could only be one captain.
Oh, wow. There's tension.
Yeah.
I actually like Captain Chris and Captain Morgan, but okay. So Lil Squirt, they're going to be here for an Around the World segment, so they'll join us to talk about their adventures in the White Mountains, as well as their travels to Europe, Africa, Colorado, Ecuador, Patagonia, and Scotland, and I probably missed something else here. So all this, and if we don't run out of time, we'll get to recent search and rescue news, and we are doing it this night because we've kicked the last 2 weeks, so we got to do it. So I'm Mike.
Yeah, and I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
Okay, stop. So more sponsors.
More sponsors. Oh, I've been a little distracted. Oh, wow. Okay, so the next sponsor here is a fairly new sponsor for us. So we have 48 Peaks Alzheimer's. Hike to Fight Alzheimer's with 48 Peaks, a fundraising and awareness event for the Alzheimer's Association. Join 450 plus hikers this summer as we hike New Hampshire's 4,000 footers, or create your own hiking adventure from a 52 of the View to a Prezi Traverse, or climb your favorite mountain. Together, we will paint the mountains purple and raise vital funding to advance the care, support, and research efforts of the Alzheimer's Association. Visit alz.org /48 peaks. So it's alz.org /48 peaks to learn more. And, oh, excuse me. Oh, no. This could be the last moment.
Oh, no, the choking
Giving up
episode.
the ghost. I just wanted to just briefly give a shout out to our supporters, EMS and Reckless Brewery. And everybody knows Reckless Brewery, one of the best breweries up around here, up in Bethlehem. And of course, EMS, a fantastic outdoor clothing store, gear store. And you can go check them out at ems.com.
I was like holding out hope, Stomp, that you were going to start choking.
I got to make episode 100. I got to. Just a few more.
We'll let the executive producer in, though, to, revitalize you after.
Were you scared? Were you frightened for your life? I'm telling you, Daphne was headbutting the door and crying. Tracy's apparently a little bit sensitive to the cat dander and all that, so no Daphne tonight. Free Daphne.
Mm-hmm. Stomp, have you ever seen that movie? I think it's The Twilight Zone, the movie from the 80s. And there was a scene, and I used to be so goddamn scared of cats. There was a scene where this little girl was sleeping in bed.
Yeah.
And a cat broke into her room, and she was breathing, and the cat stole all of her breath.
Oh, I do remember that.
I think killed the little girl. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, vaguely. Stole her spirit or something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to find that on YouTube. Yeah, exactly. It was a cat which totally makes sense. That's the vibe cats give off.
Yeah, I think that's one of those cultural tales that traverses many different cultures and ages. I think that's one of those totem myths or whatever that's out there, cats stealing your souls.
Well, that's
I believe it.
Yeah, because remember the cat cult, that was the whole thing, is the lady said that the cats would hold the souls of, I think, the good 144,000 people that survive.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So stay away from Daphne. Anyway, beer talk. What are you guys drinking tonight?
Ladies before gentlemen, I guess.
Oh, well, I don't usually get called a lady, so we'll start there. I have a Voodoo Ranger Juice Force IPA. We discovered Voodoo Ranger while we were out in Colorado. Good stuff.
So that's brewed out in Colorado? Do you find it around here locally?
We do now, yeah.
Wow, cool.
But that's where we first located it, was out there.
Oh, that's neat. And you, Chris?
And I have a Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA.
Wow, Imperial.
9%.
So fancy.
This is 9.5.
One and done. It's incredible. How about you, Mike? Anything?
I am drinking. So Mrs. Mike got me. I'm impressed with this. So she'll, when I run out of beer now, she'll buy me beer, and then she'll pick what she thinks I like.
Huh.
So she kind of failed. She got me like a Allagash White type of beer, and I was like, yeah, I like an IPA. So she went out and got me. It's called 617 from Lord Hobo Brewing Company out of Woburn, Mass.
Nice. I've had some of their stuff. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a hazy IPA, and the thing I like about it is that it's 6.17% alcohol.
Almost water.
Yeah, but it's 617 for the Boston zip code.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then 6.17, which I think Woburn is 781 for their area code. So I don't know if they're trying to flex on some of the Boston coolness, but
capping on the
Isn't Lord Hobo the one that does boom sauce too?
Yes. Yeah. And that's another high alcohol ABV.
That's a one and done.
Yeah. And I'm having a Burlington beer company. Let's see what it's called here. Stainless Forest. I love Burlington Beer Company. They're definitely one of my favorites. And it's a double IPA coming in at a solid 8.2%.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So we are moving on to recent hikes here, Stomp. So I think obviously you haven't been hiking. You've been doing the snowmobile stuff. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I guess so. Yeah, there's a couple neat things. I had a boo-boo where I took a tour up towards Gorham, and I was looking for a pond, totally missed it, and ended up going like 20 miles beyond where I wanted to go. And I had to get to that awkward, uncomfortable moment where I had to pull over and stop and say, I totally missed it, and we're turning around. I went all the way up to like Gorham. I couldn't believe it. It was so ridiculous. I was looking for Safety Pond, went right by it. So it was pretty silly. While I was up there, by the way, they let ATVs on the snowmobile trails. So I saw 3 ATVs with four-wheelers cruising along up into Jericho Pond. And it looked like they were sort of struggling, but I guess that's allowed up there. That was really interesting. And I on the rail trail that connects to Appalachia Trailhead, the long rail trails.
Yeah.
Cruising along there, in the distance, I see these 2 little dots, and as we're getting closer and closer and closer, ends up being these 2 really moderate-sized deer just sitting right in the middle of the snowmobile trail, and they didn't budge until we got within, say, 30 feet, and then they bolted. But it was sort of neat. I'm like, are those people? And then
Your vision's about as good as mine.
yeah, it was crazy. Oh, and by the way, this is another reason why it's so dangerous at this time of the year, and they have to close some of the trails. We had somebody break one of the sled axle rods, like the skis on the front. So he was coming in towards the end, like literally a 1/10 of a mile back to where we start, and hit one of the rails of the old Fabian's Railroad, and ripped the ski right off. Ripped the whole, like the strut, everything, just ripped it right off. Luckily, he was okay. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why they like to be really cautious with the trail conditions and things. So that was my week. How about you? You got a good hike in?
I do, yeah. I'll break it down in a minute, but I had one comment about the snowmobiling is that I drove up on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I think I left my house. I got to Beaverbrook at like 6:20, so I left my house at like 4 or so. And matter of fact, I left my house at 4. I knew it was going to be a good day because when I got to Hooks at the rest area, the breakfast sandwiches, they're usually like not out until like 5:30 or so. The breakfast sandwiches were like out and ready to go at like 4:30 in the morning when I got to the rest area. So I was like, I know this is going to be good. But I got through Franconia. I got into Franconia Notch. It started snowing at like exit 28 or so. It was like just coming down a little bit. So things started to slow down. Going through the Notch was like very precarious. It was coming down pretty significantly. And then when you break off of 93 to get onto Route 3 to head up towards Twin Mountain, like I was giving myself like maybe like 8 or 9. I mean, all right, I was being a Massachusetts. I was giving myself like 8 or 9 car lanes because I was like, if I have to stop, like there's no way that I'm going to be able to stop in time. And I was driving my daughter's car, the Subaru, so I had a small car. But I was like, I don't know way I'm going to be able to stop in time because even though the plows are in front of us, it was like snow on the ground, so I would have slid. And so I was giving good distance. These cars with these snowmobiles on the back of them were like right an inch off of my bumper.
Oh yeah, they're pretty
and
aggressive.
I'm like, what are they?
In general?
I totally understand why there's so many snowmobile accidents because then we got off of 93 and headed towards Twin Mountain. You can't see anything. The snow's coming down. It's like a whiteout. And the guy that was driving an inch off my bumper, he had 2 snowmobiles on the like top of his like pickup truck.
Stacked.
He passed us on Route 3, passed like 6 or 7 cars. Like there was no way that he would know whether or not cars were coming the other direction. He just went and he was going like 90 miles an hour.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I see it all the time. They're generally fairly aggressive drivers and they're in a hell of a rush for whatever reason. But you're right. That's a funny comparison. Like these are the people on the sleds ripping it at 90 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Huh.
I was like, how is he going to stop if I have to stop? Like, I'm dead.
Yeah. I'll never forget when I was coming through the notch. I've said this before, but I was working up in Franconia, and one of those, big trucks and the sled carriers in the back came cruising past me on the left, cut in front of me within feet, and then off they went. So this was right around exit 32. And when we get into the notch, it was one of these cold mornings. The notch froze up. It froze up like instantaneously. And sure enough, traffic comes to a stop, and this guy had slipped off and driven right off of the parallel to the basin, that big boulder that's just past the basin. The sleds were upside down, totally demolished. His truck was in a ditch somewhere. So I don't know, it was almost like one of those karma things. I didn't feel too bad.
Yeah, it's not worth it. And it's not like I'm driving slow either. Like I drive in New England my whole life, but it was just, I was like, I got to talk to Stomp about this. Tell your friends to slow down. Anyway, so I did the Twins and Galehead. So Stomp, I pulled together Jake, who's been on the show, and his friend Peter.
Oh, Jakester?
Yeah, Jake hiked with me.
Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah. He's a great guy.
Yeah, great guy. And then his friend Peter, another great guy, he hiked with me. And then Steve was the guy that I met at the trailhead a couple of weeks ago, who's a listener that we ended up hiking the Carters together. I reached back out to him because he's doing his winter 4,000 footers too. So I was like, I'm doing this loop. And he was like, oh, I'll join. So it was, and I was trying to get my friend Mike, but he wasn't able to make it. So there was 4 of us that went. And I wasn't sure about this hike because I've done this area before, but never in winter. So I had to do some research. So for listeners, this one's a little bit tricky from a parking perspective. Mm-hmm. You can park on, on Route 3, there's it's like a rest area or like cross-country trails called Beaver Brook, and it's past the Skookumchuck trailhead. And so you can park there and you can do like an out and back where you go to Galehead first up Gale River. So Beaver Brook connects to Gale River Trail, and then you can do an out and back. You can get Galehead and then get South Twin and North Twin and come back. It's a little bit shorter to actually do a loop. So what we did is we dropped a car at Beaver Brook, and then if you go up into Twin Mountain, there's a right-hand turn after Haystack Road, and you can park at this hotel called the Seven Dwarfs Hotel, and it's a $10 fee. You just leave it in your windshield, and then you'll walk up the road. You cut through this private drive that eventually connects you with Haystack Road, and then you walk up to the summer trailhead. So it's a little bit of a logistical question. And Philip Warner from Section Hiker, he actually had a great article that sort of broke down the logistics of how he did this hike. So I'll link that in the show notes. But you can do it in either direction. Like if you do a car spot, like I would recommend actually starting at North Twin first, because in my opinion, it's the harder part of it because you got to do that big climb up North Twin, and then the rest of it's kind of downhill. I mean, you get a little bit of a like climb up to South Twin, but we did it starting at Seven Dwarfs, walking up the road, and then we did North Twin first. So I don't know. Have you guys ever done this hike? Do you have an opinion on direction?
We have done it many times, and I would recommend in the wintertime to go up to Galehead first and come down North Twin. So this way here you got the big water crossing. And if there's any issues with that, it's at the end of your hiking and just scooting out of there.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas if you do, when you're staying on the north side, right, you'd stay on the north side of the river now. Even though that trail meanders back and forth like 3 times, you can just stay on one side, and so just make one water crossing. And if you do happen to get wet at the beginning of your hike, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If South Twin is icy at all, in my opinion, it's easier just to go up the ice and climb up that.
We'd rather climb up steep.
Got it. Yeah. So I guess so it sounds like you can go either direction. I mean, we
absolutely.
We got I think somebody had done that trail like a couple of days before or maybe a week before and said the water crossings were okay. So we looked at the temperature and we were like, I think we'll be okay. But we did we did the opposite direction. We got the North Twin climb out of the way. But you're right. We stayed on the north side of the river the entire way out. And then when you get to the Fire Warden's Trail, it's a little bit past that. That's when we crossed. And it was already like kind of broken out. We were bare-booted across the river. We had to do a little bit of back and forth to get across it. Once we got across the river, then you could see snow had come up like pretty significantly. So we switched over to snowshoes. We're in snowshoes the rest of the way. And then the climb up North Twin is a steady but a brisk climb.
Relentless.
It's awesome.
Relentless. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. So it's like, I think it's like 2.5 miles or something, or 2 miles. But when we got, we had to basically gear up when we got up to the top because it was starting to get windy. The drifts right below the summit, right before that first viewpoint, we had like foot tall drifts that we were busting through. So we were kind of done breaking trail. We got to that first viewpoint right before you go to the North Twin Spur. And happily, there was a group of 4 people that showed up behind us. And Peter, being the smart guy that he is, he's like, let's just relax. We're in no rush. And we let the other people like go in front of us. So they broke trail from North Twin over to South Twin and down into Galehead. But we were kind of leapfrogging them a little bit back and forth. We saw them at Galehead as well. But the view in North Twin, that little outlook was awesome. We could see out to the presidentials. And then it started, just the views all day were amazing. So we hit it on a good day for sure. Interestingly, there was a couple of, how sometimes in the winter, like you get these views that you wouldn't get in the summer because trees are grown in. I noticed like the spur on North Twin Spur Trail, right at the bottom of the col between North Twin and South Twin, you could actually bushwhack in and get a nice view out to the presidentials. And then the views on South Twin obviously are amazing. And then we got another view when we got to Galehead. We got another view when we climbed on top of Galehead. To the left of Galehead, you can go to this opening and you can actually see out into the Pemi that way. So it was like clear enough and you're high enough with the snow that you can get some views that you wouldn't see in the summer.
Why am I drawing a blank? Did you say Beaver Brook?
Beaver Brook, yeah. So you know where Mount Cleveland is in that little area?
Oh,
It's right by there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, but South Twin was good. We ended up going down South Twin. So I tried to butt sled a little bit and it was a fail. It was just not working.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, it should be butt sledding season soon, right? With all the ice coming through now. Not yet? How about like...
Not into the butt sliding.
No. It's a dangerous thing for...
Well, that's what Jake said. I was trying it and he's kind of like... He's like, it's just too much energy. He's like the up and down.
Too much energy.
I will say, like we climbed down South Twin, which was good because it was actually really well broken out. So it was a lot better going down it than it is in the summer. But by the time we got to the cabin, the Galehead hut, we were starving. So we ate on the porch. The sun hit you perfectly. So it was nice and warm. There was a couple of gray jays that were trying to steal our food and stuff, but we had a nice sort of 20-minute, 30-minute session at the hut, just kind of relaxing. And then we went out without our packs. So Peter stayed down at the porch. So we just went out without packs. Made no difference. It was still like a ridiculous climb.
And that pack always seems heavier when you put it on afterwards, right?
It was, yeah, it was.
It's like that Westbourne spur. You put it down and go run out there to Westbourne, and then you come back and you're like, geez, this thing, somebody put rocks in it while I was over there.
Yeah. The only difference that the no pack makes is that it just feels ridiculously heavy when you have to put it back on.
Right.
But no, it was a nice day stomp. I guess like the one thing I will say is like when we came out, like that last 4 miles of like, the last 3 miles where it's just flat and you're getting on the road to Galehead, and then we all had snowshoes on. It was just like this loud crunch, and you couldn't have a conversation with anybody, and it was a grind the last 3 miles or so.
This weekend I'm thinking about hitting probably the Franconia Ridge, and I don't need snowshoes, right? Maybe not.
Shame.
I would carry them in the winter.
Yeah.
The problem has been
shame.
There's been a lot. Yeah, shame. There's been a lot of post holes. So if you got the snowshoes, it does level that out some when it's just a little bit soft. So
yeah, sure.
But yeah, the post holes have been significant this year.
Gnarly.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. Maybe I'll think of a different location.
And a lot of wind. Been a lot of wind up there too.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing, a long traverse, but whaleback always calls to me, so that's probably not broken out, so I could snowshoe that for sure. But anyway, I'm thinking of doing something. We'll see.
Keep us updated, Stomp. I don't think I'm hiking this weekend, so you'll have to do something.
Okay, sounds good to me. Yeah, without the snowmobiling, it's like all of a sudden I have an open weekend for a change, which is nice. We'll be talking about you guys soon, but have you done anything recently? Probably everything, right? The grid last. We did the grid last week.
Yeah.
I did
every
the
weekend.
Kinsman's yesterday.
Nice. And yourself, Tracy?
God, I don't even remember what we did last weekend. We go out every weekend, and I tend to lose track after a while because it's like, okay, what do I need on the grid? Oh, we did Cabot.
Oh, yeah.
And then
the day before.
we did the Wildcats.
Wildcats, right.
Yeah,
Wow.
with Gwen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but because she went on.
Okay, well, hold the stories. We'll dig into all your adventures for sure. The big deep dive.
Yeah, this is your moment. We're gonna interview Chris and Lil Squirt. I'm gonna call you Tracy from now on.
That's good.
So first we have some notable hikes. Notable listener hike of the week. Tag SLASR on your adventure to be considered for SLASR's hike of the week. No guarantees. You'll be plugged on the show. So we have Vicky takes a hike, tackled Lafayette for 485 out of 576 for the grid. And then did Owl's Head. I assume it was on the same day based upon how it was written. Subi.hikes did Ethan's first winter hike up Jackson, followed by Wildcat skiing. So that's cool. The Hunting Hippie, Cabot, 42 out of 48. John Calvin, 85, did Madison with a really cool looking pup. That would look like a nice day, nice weather. Nick hikes and plays guitar, tackled Jackson for 20 out of 48 for the winter 48. And then Run, Cast, Run did Gunstock over to the Belknap Mountains Fire Tower, which was really cool looking. Lorelei, Lantern Hill Hiking Trail, which I'm not too familiar with, but that looked like a nice, smaller little adventure. And then Steve Summits did the quintessential Welt Dickey Loop. Yes. So tag us and we can give you a little plug here on the podcast. Let's see. We do have a sponsor before we get rolling. And this is do you two like back sweat?
No, and I certainly have a lot of it lately.
Well, let me tell you, back sweat sucks in all types of weather and hikes. Not only is it uncomfortable, sweat is a risk factor causing your core temperature to fluctuate if it doesn't evaporate off your back. Check out Vaucluse's Cool Dry Backpack Airflow Frame, a backpack accessory that installs in your favorite pack, sizes 18 liters to 65 liters, and creates an airflow gap between you and your pack. Whether you're in hot or cold temps, even if you have a pack with a curved frame, the Cool Dry frame is a real game changer when it comes to airflow. So visit VaucluseGear.com to order a Cool Dry frame today. All right, now it's your time, right? The big moment.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool.
Yeah, welcome, Chris and Tracy. So, Stump, why don't you kick this off and introduce Chris and Tracy, and then sort of give a background on how you got to know them.
Yes, this is Captain Chris Wright and Tracy, Captain Morgan. Now, Tracy, are you living up here full time now?
I am.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys are neighbors more or less. Are you officially in Thornton, or what town is that?
North Woodstock.
North Woodstock. Okay, so you're like maybe like 5-10 minutes from me, which is really cool.
Yeah, it was
I think it took 20. Right at 175. Right at 175.
only because you can't speed.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, cool enough. Fair enough. That's fine. I got to know you two indirectly through social media. And just for the listeners' sake, there are lots of Instagram and Facebook hiking groups out there. Instagram's really great for all that stuff. So I started seeing initially, I want to say, you two in the White Mountain Misfits group several years ago. And for those that don't know, the White Mountain Misfits was just, a group of a dozen plus hikers. And we've talked about this before with different guests like Eric Todd Sweet, Steve, of course. Yeah, you bet. So what I like in that group too is like the Marvel Avengers. So it's like you have all these different superheroes in the movie. It's sort of like Infinity War. And then after several years of the White Mountain Misfit Marvel Avengers, you guys sort of disbanded and did your own thing and just had your own spin-off. So, and so it's like all these sequels and spin-offs. And so Chris and Tracy sort of had their own spin-offs, and I gradually I started seeing Chris more in the neighborhood, and then here and there, and Tracy and I just recently got to know each other a little more through search and rescue volunteer work and whatnot. But that's how I got to know you guys, and they're part of the Hike Tribe family.
So welcome to the tribe then. So Tracy, why don't you kick it off and introduce yourself, give a little bit of background on your sort of your hiking endeavors, how you got into outdoor activities, and then hold off on talking about how you and Chris met. We'll cover that at the end, but just to start off with, if you want to give a quick intro.
So I guess I've been playing in the woods since I was a kid. My grandparents used to bring me and my great-grandmothers, who lived on at least 6 acres, and everybody around her had, 20 plus. So we would be out in the woods. Essentially what I know to be now is bushwhacking, and just continuing with kind of roaming the whole woods. And then my parents would take us on small hikes. I worked for a group home, and we used to take them up Chicora regularly, including in some not so favorable conditions. And then in 2013, my cousin's husband was like, "Hey, you want to go do a hike, 4,000 footer? There's this list." And away I went, so I think I've been hooked ever since on some of the bigger stuff.
What do you think it was about that time in your life that it just clicked with you and that you started getting into it?
Yeah, so I've always loved being out there and climbing, but at that point in time, my parents were both sick, so it was pretty much therapeutic. They both had, my father at that point had cancer, and my mother had cancer after. So I basically, hiked my problems away, so to speak. But, was able to share the experience with others and give myself a physical outlet. So I'm not real good at sitting still, so it definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah, and was it a process to sort of learn the gear and the safety aspects of it and finding out where to hike and making the decisions on where to go all the time, or did it come pretty easy for you?
Oh, no, it definitely did not come easy. So I spent a lot of time relying at first on, I hiked with both of my cousins' husbands on each side of my family, and there was a lot of, I relied on them and their research. So I did minimal, because I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine, just tell me what I need to bring and how many miles I'm doing. And
out with the guys.
Yeah. I'm not real good at playing with the girls always, because they don't always want to get dirty. Luckily, I've met a great group of women that are fine with getting dirty now. So, but, all right, awesome. I know you want to fully comment on that, but, so the gear was definitely a hard thing. I didn't have a ton of money to buy all the top gear, so that was definitely a process. Going out was a learning lesson every time. So, you learn each time, and as long as you make note of that and pay attention, then you keep banking and getting better gear as you go along.
Totally. I hear you.
Yeah, and did you specifically say like, okay, I'm going to do the 4,000 footer list, I'm going to get into winter hiking? Like, how did that develop for you?
So after the first two, I definitely said, yep, we're doing the list. I took a little bit of a break because my parents were going through treatment. So I needed to be close to home. I didn't want to be out of cell phone range. So I had a little bit of a break, and after my mother passed in June, then I hit the trails. The guys I went out with were all about peak bagging, so it was definitely like, okay, let's hit a Kata, Wildcat, Kata Mariah Traverse, just to train to do the Prezzies. So they were all about how many, peaks can we bag while we're out. So that was kind of how I spent my time, and then come winter, I didn't have quite enough gear, so I dialed it back a lot and then waited till I could kind of get a little bit of gear. And then one of my first major winter hikes was Washington. And Marshall had said to me, hey, you want to go up Lionhead? He goes, you need this, this, and this. I said, all right, I'll figure out how to get it. I got the gear and away I went.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was definitely hooked on all of that. The crazier the conditions, the more I enjoy it.
What do you think it is? Were you always somebody that sort of got off on sort of testing your limits and amping up your adrenaline, or is that something that just came later in life for you?
No, that was probably since I was kind of a teenager. A little bit of a rebel streak. Yeah. So, it was kind of an outlet for that. And that's what hanging out with the misfits always aided in as well. Aiding in a little bit of that, let's push the boundaries just a little bit.
Got it. And you've been hiking in the whites for a long time now, so you're coming up on like 10 years or so. Do you find that like you've sort of mined everything in the whites out for all the interesting activities? Do you ever get bored? I know it sounds like if you're gridding right now, then it doesn't sound like getting bored or repetition is that big of an issue. But can you talk a little bit about your perspective on like how do you keep it fresh?
Every day you kind of go out is different, but I can get a little bit bored doing the same trails. But I do think that, given the conditions, we're out every weekend. So unless it's, 100 below zero or it's pouring rain, we're going out. So, the conditions kind of keep it interesting. So every day might be a little bit different, but I'm definitely a fan of checking out different stuff, going a different way. If it's something I haven't seen before, that's what kind of keeps me really interested and peaked. There's so many trails out there, not to mention bushwhacking.
100 below zero. Give me a break. That
No. Yeah, never. Just once.
Now, will you go solo, Tracy, or do you typically go in a group?
I've typically gone in a group. I have gone solo. One of the things, I had wanted to do a little while back was a big hike solo. So I did that. But I like the shared experience. And not only that, Chris is retired, so he's home. So, we're able to go out or we have a lot of friends that enjoy hiking. But if no one was available or whatever, I would have no problem going out by myself.
And do you do anything?
There will come a time eventually here, Mike. There will come a time when she'll have things that she needs to get for her list, and I'll have things that I have for my list, and they may not match up together. So I see that could happen.
He just doesn't want to hike with me all the time.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's
not true.
Now, you're gridding right now. How far along are you? Do you keep track of that, or are you just doing?
I do. Nope. So I think right around 75, 76%.
And do you? I always envision I've run into a lot of gridders lately, and I didn't run into a lady that's going through her second round. I think she's got to be in her 70s or something. But I've run into a lot of gridders recently, and I'm assuming it's a small club. Do you know everyone that's gridding? pretty
No,
much,
not
huh?
everyone. I know there's a Facebook page,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of names in there I don't recognize. But we run into a lot of gritters out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for the most part, a lot of people that are out there on the weekends are either finishing up a winter or they're gritting. At some of the more popular trails, there probably are people out just generally winter hiking. But, if the weather's a little sketchy or it's one of those trails that, it's not so fun, it's probably another gritter.
Yeah, and I guess for the listener's sake, I should probably define what the grid is, because I don't want to assume, but basically what the grid is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's essentially, it's the 4,000 footer list that you do the 4,000 footer list every month of the year. So essentially, instead of doing 48 hikes, you're doing 576 hikes. So you're going to Owl's Head every month out of the year, and then every single 4,000 footer. So it takes a lot of planning, and ultimately you're not doing 48 individual hikes, you're clustering them together, and probably 25 or so hikes each month. And you don't have to do it in one calendar year. People do it over the course of I don't know how long you're working on it. I'm 25% or so along, and I've been hiking for 8 or 9 years, and I haven't even been trying to do the grid. But how long have you been working on it specifically, Tracy?
I mean, I think the last, 2 years, probably, will you say? We've been really actively planning out hikes around what we need for grid peaks.
Mm-hmm.
But vacations get in the way of that sometimes, which is good.
Yeah. And I've always had this, and I don't know for a fact, but I've always had this thought that April and May have to be the most difficult months to deal with the grid, because you're dealing with water crossings and just worse conditions.
Deteriorating monorail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
monorail. So is that true, or do you find that it's not?
Absolutely.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, it's a miserable time. I don't even know. The weather is beautiful. So the days are nice and sunny. So the temperature's perfect. And you have no bugs in April.
Yeah.
So that's great. But the condition of the monorail is just awful. So it's a toss-up. But
last spring, Mike, her and I went out to do a Zealand Bond Traverse. And it was either March or April or May. And it was just miserable. We were just punching through constantly for 20 plus miles.
yeah. But it was fun.
And how do you?
Luckily, it was a beautiful day.
I'm curious, Chris. So when you grid, or do you essentially just the months that you need to close out the Zealands, and do you always do Zealand Bond Traverse? That's pretty much your only option, right?
I have done the twins with the bonds too.
Okay. And then what about hail? How do you deal with that? Is that always just a one-off?
Hail. I mean, it has been a one-off. I would have loved to, the last time we did a Bond Zealand, to squeak hail in, but I just...
And then it comes down to at the end, it's let's just get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
We'll come back for that and do the 10 miles for hail.
No.
Wow. So when do you think you'll be complete,
boy.
Tracy, based on your planning?
I'm hoping to get as much done this year as I feasibly can, but I know that a lot of my stuff, I'll have a few things for next year. I won't finish March. I have way too much going on. I have too many. And I'm not going out every day, and I'm not taking a vacation just to do the grid. I'm going to save my vacation for the times that we can go away, because it's more fun, honestly. But, I'll do as much as I can so that I can be done next year, because I don't like hiking to be a job. And sometimes it's a little bit what the grid feels like.
Oh, I would assume so.
Yeah, is a job. And I like it to be fun. I go out there because I want to, not because I have to.
How do you follow up the grid? When you finish this, do you think about what you're going to do after the grid?
I don't want it. It might be depressing.
I think it would be I don't know, coming off.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah, coming off a world tour like you two or something. What do we do now?
I think that just gives me the freedom to go do whatever I want.
Yeah, true.
During the summer, I can go rock climbing. I can go out in those wilderness sections that no one goes in. I can do all of that stuff. Whereas when I'm doing the grid, I want to make sure I can snag that peak.
Yeah.
So it's,
What was the moment when you said to yourself, I'm going to do that? Was there a moment?
The grid?
Yeah.
I had been keeping track.
Okay.
So I knew kind of my dates. So, because I just figured I'm going to keep track of the dates because I'm not ever going to stop hiking.
So it was a gradual transition into the idea?
It was.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden it was like, well, all right, what do we do this weekend? All right, well, what do we need?
Took her a little while to come out of the closet and admit she was doing the grid.
All right, well, just changing topics for a second here. So why don't you give us the big reveal, Tracy, that I've been curious about? Give us the origin story about how you met this guy sitting next to you. How did you and Chris meet?
The origin
Did he
story of
kidnap
the
you?
Marvel Comics. Yeah, Chris is hesitant about this one.
So
This is the confessional.
the person I knew and was spending a fair amount of time with introduced me to the Misfits.
Yeah.
So I've been hiking with the Misfits, and after a bit of time, things had kind of transitioned in my life, and I was single and spending a lot more time up north, and I don't know, I think we had a lot of things in common and hit it off, and I haven't left his house. Matter of fact, I moved all my stuff up there, so...
So stop. During this section, when you edit this, put in the Love Boat theme song, okay? So that's good. But I tell people this, like I say, and again, I'm married. I don't know anything about this, but it's been 25 years I've been with Mrs. Mike. But I would assume, like, if you're a single person and you're looking to meet somebody, like hiking, running, getting into all these activities is a great way to meet somebody off of these. I don't know what these dating sites are. I don't know how these young people meet people, but I feel like hiking, and it's a good social activity. Join the hiking buddies, meet your new wife. That's how it will work.
Well, it was weird because I had done the online dating stuff, and then when I was hiking with my cousin's husbands. So I was hiking with two married men. So I'm thinking, well, I'm never meeting anybody on the trail because they're never going to talk to me. So I'm going, all right, well, this is working out really well for me. And then I met the Misfits and didn't care. I just had a great group of friends that I got to hike with every weekend and have a great time with. So, they, really kind of launched my, hiking was my every weekend activity at that point. And it was because I loved hiking, but I loved spending time with all of them. Became really a second family. They were always
epic hikes.
Yeah. Gwen is a great planner. So she planned some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah. She sure does.
Yeah.
Her accounts on Instagram, really are impressive.
Oh, yeah.
You can see the planning that comes in with just by her summary of what she did that day.
Big mileage girl.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we had a great time. She'd plan a lot of bushwhacks and slides and stuff, so it was fun.
Great. All right, cool. Chris, so why don't you introduce yourself, give a little bit of background, sort of just your background in outdoor activities, and talk a little bit about sort of like your life outside of hiking as well.
Outside of hiking.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Chris, and I pretty much spent my whole life at sea. Started going to sea before I can remember. I made my first offshore fishing trip when I was 11 years old. I had to tell my little league coach that I wouldn't be there the next week. I tell that story and people don't believe it, but it's true. I went to a maritime academy, continued fishing through those years, spent a lot of time traveling around on tankers and supply ships in the merchant marine, and always went back to fishing because it just wasn't as much time away from home as the ship would leave for 3-4 months, whereas the fishing industry was kind of like a 2-week home 2-week out, 5-day home. That was my schedule all the time. 2 weeks out, 5 days home. And in my 20s, I had done some backpacking around Europe for a few months. Did the dirtbag thing and married, kids. And then, things happen, life happens. And I think I was probably about 53 or 54. And I did a hike of Mount Washington with a friend who had it on her bucket list too, and we did that. And I can remember going up there, and this guy said, "Oh, are you guys gonna do Jefferson too?" And I'm like, "What, are you shitting me? Like, we're just gonna try to do this one mountain." I didn't know anything about peak bagging. I didn't know anything about the 48. I had never heard anything about that. It was just on the bucket list to do Mount Washington. And so with this other person too, we continued to do. When we did find out about the list, we still never knew about peak bagging. So we were doing all these mountains one at a time. And when I tell Tracy about that, we just say like how crazy it was, how many miles I probably did in my first round of the 48.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time we actually did a peak bag was the Franconia Ridge up the Fallen Waters down Old Bridle Path. That was the first time. It's like, oh my God, we knocked off 2. So we didn't complete those. We didn't complete the 48 together. And but anyhow, then.
Nomenclature, Chris. Nomenclature.
No, just going back to the fishing piece of it, I'm always curious. I'm fat. I watch like Wicked Tuna, and I'm always fascinated by like that lifestyle. Like, so you're out at sea you could be out for 4 or 5 days at a time, and then coming back to
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Where were you? Where were you fishing out of?
New Bedford.
New Bedford.
Mass.
Yeah. And what kind of fish were you fishing?
Sea scallops.
Sea scallops. Wow. And what's that lifestyle like? Is it as romanticized as I think it is, or is it just, it must be a hard life?
It's a grind. It's a grind. You don't get to sleep much. It's a physical job. And that's, there's no romanticism of it, of, just going out there and, staring at the beautiful water and the scenery and, the sunsets, and it's a grind.
Yeah, that gets old after like a day or two, I bet. But I always go to scratch that itch. I go out once a year on the hard merchandise, one of those boats, and I do like haddock fishing for 6 hours, and then that's about it. So, but I always like envision that life being, sort of a great way. I would assume that it's good when you're catching fish and you're making money, but it's got to be a grind.
Yeah, definitely a grind.
Yeah. So you picked up hiking relatively late in life then.
Yep.
And do you, can you talk a little bit about sort of your learning process to sort of pick it up? I know you talked a little bit about this, that you didn't know anything about the list, but how did you go about sort of getting a little bit more seasoned around hiking?
Pretty much just on my own, and I've never been on Facebook. I've only been on Instagram the last, few years, not that long. So I think it was just like maybe Google hike this, and most of my time off was during the winter time too. So I kind of like started right in, other than Washington and a few other hikes, I was mostly a winter hiker. What happened in the fishing industry in '94, they really cut back on the days at sea. It was a conservation measure. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself with a lot more time off in the winter time. And my kids had gotten older and, in high school, and they were playing sports and they didn't want to ski anymore with me. And so I just switched over to hiking. And once I started doing that in the winter time, I found like that is my favorite season. Winter hiking.
Ditto. It's so great.
Yeah, no, I like it too.
So sad to see it go.
Yeah, I can't say it's my favorite. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I prefer being able to sit up and enjoy the peak when it's nice and warm and a little toasty.
Yeah. Now, Chris, are you primarily like a day hiker, or do you get into the backpacking at all?
Tracy and I have been out before, but mostly day hiking.
Yeah.
Is that just because you're local and it's just like, because I find the same thing, like I don't mind doing the backpacking once in a while, but it's just so much more I guess it just makes more sense to just sort of get back to the camp in Maine and just take a nice hot shower. So I like doing it occasionally, but it's not something that I chase after that much.
I know we're only about 20 minutes from the Franconia Ridge too. And we've talked about, we both have bivy sacks, and we both talked about, it'd be nice to just go up on a peak there and just spend the night up there. You know, any mountain, just get up there. And it just hasn't happened yet.
I think we've talked about it for 2 summers now.
I mean, we have 4-season bivvies. We have all the equipment, everything to get up there, and it just hasn't happened. You know, maybe that hot meal is waiting at home in that big bed. And
a warm shower.
On a similar note, do you guys roll your eyes when you have to drive to Mount Washington because it's so far away? Have you had that experience yet?
No, we're used to it, you know, just going on the other side of the state. And, you know, she has just started offering, like, you know, I'll drive home. I'm we're going to split driving duty.
That's funny because Mr. Stomp and I are like, oh my God, that's like a lifetime away to go over there.
Well, the Wildcats are
Wildcats, isolation, anything down on 16 over
totally.
there.
Yeah. See, I'm the opposite because I'm like over on the Freiburg side. So for me to come over to like Kinsman's is like, that might as well be going to like California.
Right.
Before I moved up here, I was in Rochester, New Hampshire. And so for me to go over to like Moose was a ridiculous drive. It was almost as far as going to Cabot, pretty much. And I was like, this is awful. But now, I think now just you get used to driving every weekend, so that's what you do.
Right.
Yeah, and for listeners that aren't local to New Hampshire, like anytime you got to go east to west in New Hampshire, it's a project.
It's not convenient.
Yeah. And then, so Chris, from your perspective, so as far as pace goes, you and Tracy pretty much in sync as far as like pace, and how does that work?
We definitely hike well together.
Okay.
So we hike well, but you know, there's about a foot difference between the two of us. So just by nature of that, you know, he's
double the pace.
Yeah, pretty much.
We hike together, though. I do not run up the trail.
No, we've always been good, because even when he was out to sea, like summer was harder for him to hike, and I was kind of getting in a groove during summer. You know, so you learn how to hike well together. You know, you adjust your own.
This took a little while, though, Mike. I would come in from sea. I'd usually be dehydrated, no sleep, and come up here, and she just, you know, full of energy now because I've been off for a couple of weeks, and she's going to show me who's boss and run up the trail.
That's not what would happen. We would go out with the Misfits, and I'd still be sucking air.
Well, that crew's got some serious firepower, so that is that's a tough crew to keep up with. But and I always had that anxiety, like I'm a solo hiker, but even this weekend, like I was like, okay, you know, my biggest fear, honestly, is like getting in a situation where I'm the slow person, because I'm not really used to that. But I found that, like, I've been hiking with Steve a couple times now. He's a new friend I met. And then like Jake and Peter, like we had no issues whatsoever with pace. Like I was completely comfortable in the zone I was in, and I think everybody else was as well. So I think a lot of times, like if you're hiking and you're nervous about joining people, like my experience so far has been that like most people will adjust their pace to. You'll find a way in a group of people that hike, especially if they've hiked a lot. They know how to sort of match up.
Oh, I would totally agree. And I've had people say to me, "Oh, well, you know, I can't go out with you." I'm like, look, if you want to go out with me, and I'm asking you to come, it's because I want you to come. I don't care whether you're faster or I'm fast. It just doesn't matter. We're out there to share the trail together and spend some time together. So, you know, I think when people ask you to go or they're willing to go with you, that's just what you do for the day.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So yeah, you guys got a ton of experience in the Whites. I did want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of your adventures outside of the White Mountains in New Hampshire, because I think the listeners are always interested in this, and I think people sort of plan trips outside of the Northeast. So you've both been in a lot of different locations and areas, and I want to sort of break down rapidly sort of each of those locations. But to start off with, when you plan these trips to South America or Europe or wherever you're going, like which one of you is the planner and which one sort of just shows up with their suitcase?
Tracy is. She does the planning.
So, well, that's kind of transitioned a little bit now that he's retired too, because he's got a little bit more time during the day. So we kind of split the planning a little bit. I
make the suggestion on where to go and show her, what do you think about this or something? But when it comes down to it, she's the computer person. Like, I can't stand that.
Yeah. If once it comes to, he hates the research part, so he'll book the flights. And in terms of that, the rest of it kind of.
Then I get frustrated.
Yeah, he's aggravated. But when we've gone to Ecuador, we've actually had our guide has planned it, so we've been able to give a little bit input as to what we want, but he's taking care of all the planning. So the trips to Ecuador have been great and really easy.
So what happened with that, Mike, was the first year that we went down there, it looked like a really interesting trip. So we booked it through a tour company, and we didn't achieve our goal of climbing this Mount Chimborazo, which was above 20,000 feet.
Okay.
So, and it was due to weather. And so as we were parting ways with the guide, I asked him, do people hire you, just you? He said, oh, absolutely, all the time. So we took information and we contacted him again the next year. So he knew all the hikes that we had done. He knew our pace. These other mountains that you use for acclimatization too. He knew what we had done to just bring us to different mountains. And so he set that up, and it just worked out. It worked out really well, and then we used them again the third year too. He kept our itinerary from the previous 2 years.
Got it. So we're talking about Ecuador here. So you've been 3 times. So essentially, what you're saying is you went through a tour company in the beginning. You hooked up with a guide, and then from there you were able to just sort of keep that relationship going, and they got to know sort of your preferences.
Correct.
So you fly out of Boston into Ecuador. How far of a trip is it from where you're hiking from the airport when you fly into Ecuador?
Well, all shitty roads lead to good trails.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. How long does it take you to get out of the airport to get to where you're going?
It could be like 5 hours.
Okay.
So what we would always do with Ecuador though, or most places that we go to, we always try to find the highest accommodations that we can. So in Ecuador, flying into Quito, you're at 9,000 feet. So right away, our bodies are starting.
Yep.
And we always try to arrive a few days ahead of time. And there is one like a gondola in the city that you can take from 9,000 up to 13,500.
Okay.
So you're already getting a head start on the acclimatization just taking this ride. So we would go up this mountain, and then we would say, all right, listen, we're going to go, we're going to climb another 1,000 feet up, maybe 1,500 feet, and just to let our bodies, start getting used to the altitude. And we've done that 3 times.
So funny story, though, about that particular mountain. We've gone up there 3 times. We have not summited that mountain yet. For a variety of reasons, due to, we've said, okay, that's good enough. One time we did it at the end as well.
So we were fully acclimatized.
And we're like, all right, if it rains or the conditions are really crappy, we're not going to continue. Sure as not.
We were about, I don't know, maybe 100 meters from the summit.
Something ridiculous.
I mean, we were so close, and it started raining. And, when it comes down in the tropics. So we just turned around and we started running back. So we've been up there so many times and used this mountain. We've never summited it.
And then with the guide that you're with, is he with you the whole time?
No, that was without the guide. We never were with the guide on this particular mountain.
So he just sent you off and said, like, okay, you can take the gondola up, and then you're gonna be.
No. We always did that before we even met him.
Oh, okay.
I had a question about the gondola. Yeah. Was that a suggested trick, or did you come up with that idea?
No, we came up with it ourselves.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. First time I've heard of something like that.
Yeah, so just researching stuff to do.
Things to do around the city. I'm like, oh my God, we can take this gondola up to 13,500.
And puke.
Yeah, I know. We got up there the first time, and he's walking, and he does much better at altitude than I do. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I think.
It's really amazing. If you have not experienced that, it's a really, but we know when you go to different places and you're at altitude, we just know what to expect.
I had one question about the acclimatization. You said you were fully acclimatized, so you were used to 13, and then
we had been up to 20 already.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That was my question. Okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
interesting.
And Tracy,
that
I'm
particular
curious
trip.
because my wife is a little bit of a high maintenance traveler, so hopefully she's not going to listen to this. But like, is there any opportunity? For
Here
you,
we go. This is going to be interesting now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, is there any opportunity for you to sort of relax by the pool, get the massage, get your nails done, any of that stuff going on, or is it completely like dirt under the fingernails and you're sleeping in a tent the whole time?
All right. So I don't think I'm a high maintenance girl, and I don't think I'm a high maintenance. I'm an easy travel companion.
Blink twice, Chris, if she's lying.
I know, because I'm waiting for a sarcastic
I'm not saying a
word. Good job. So, but the first time we went down there, like we had been together about 4 months or so, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm spending 2 weeks not showering in intense. That's not what happened. We had fabulous accommodations. We stayed in some huts, but now I'm okay with not relaxing by the pool. Now, we just went to St. Martin. I was fine with sitting at the beach and swimming. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, Mike, listen, when you only can carry so many pounds, and a lot of this is winter, your ice axe, everything, all your gear, and, you stop breaking it all down, and, inside of her bag, she's sneaking in the hairdryer. And down there,
awesome.
too, you need the electric, converter.
Yep.
To plug in, because they have a different outlet down there, too, so
I am still a girl.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tracy, I'll message you about St. Martin later. We'll have to plan our trip there.
Yeah.
I mean, in Ecuador, it sounds like you made a connection, but how do they play into it? Like, do you just sort of agree to meet them on once you've gone above a certain amount of altitude, or you're going on a certain mountain, they're with you the whole time, or do they mostly just say, I'm going to be at base camp and you guys go off on your own and you'll be okay?
No. Definitely have to, we hiked with him. So what would happen is we would book him for, let's say, 10 days. We would arrive there a few days early, and then we would, before he picked us up, so he's driving us every place. So he would pick us up, and he had, we already knew what the itinerary was going to be, and then typically he would be dropping us off at the end of our time with him, and we would, usually hang around for a few more days too.
So in Ecuador, a lot of the hikes are on either a reserve or private property. One of the hikes we actually went on was behind a locked gate on private property. So he had to have the key from who knows, which he didn't have when we got there. So we ended up having to drive around to people's houses to get this key. But that actually turned out to be one of the most incredible hikes, because we got to rock climb, and I love to rock climb. So the summit was at about a little over 16.
16, yeah.
Just like 20 feet below the summit was where you topped out from this rock climb.
Yeah, but it was a 65, 70 foot rock climb.
So,
and I had never done this before either, this rock climb. Oh, wow. And, she had. And she's like, oh, this is going to be great.
Oh,
but you had to do this climb to get to the summit.
Oh, wow. So I'm like dragging up there, and I'm going, I was so tired, breathing heavy. I hit that, and I was like, yes. I had a big shot of adrenaline. I'm like, yeah, this is it. So, and I knew, because from the top of that rock climb to where the summit was, I don't know, 10, 20 feet at best, so you had to do it. And I was so pumped. There was a few other people there. So
the guide gets up there, he free climbs it up, and he sets up a belay up top, and he's already got Tracy and we're already on a rope. We're spaced, I don't know, maybe 15 feet apart on this one rope, so we're going to climb tandem. And, and I'm telling Tracy, I'm like, listen, you cannot take off because you're just going to be pulling me. I'm on the back end of this right here too. I'm like, slow down.
So, and then you've done 3 trips to Ecuador, and then you've also done Patagonia, which is sort of a mix between Argentina and Chile. How many trips to that area have you done?
I did one.
You did one.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you obviously used a guide for that? Was that just you, or did you go with a group of friends?
No, I went with a friend, but that was more of a tour.
Okay.
That wasn't really. It was day hiking and being driven around to different accommodations. It wasn't. It was nothing. It wasn't strenuous.
Okay.
Yeah, that was more of a scenery. Beautiful down there. That was more of like I want to say like a scenic tour. It was, stunning scenery and day hiking.
Okay. And then the other thing on your list here is Africa. So did you climb Kilimanjaro together?
No,
I had not. I don't think we met.
We might have met, but we weren't together.
Yeah, no, I went with Steve and Eric.
Oh, so you were on that trip too?
The infamous
The 3 of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Listeners don't know about this should go back into the archives because it's an incredible story. Look up the Steve Mason and Eric Todd Sweet episodes. They're 2 separate episodes, but it's a great story.
Yeah.
So we need your take on that whole episode, if you don't mind.
I was probably the only one that was aware of what was going on.
Okay.
Eric. Eric was in La La Land. This is on Summit Day, and Eric was in La La Land, and Steve wasn't. He wasn't feeling well at all, and I knew because I've hiked with Steve many, many times, and he was right in front of me, and you're just following the person's feet in front of you, with the headlamp on, and I just knew he was off. There was no doubt in my mind he was off. And so knowing that the guides would send anybody down if they thought you were really messed up, he would have been down. So we were just trying to shield him. And I'm like, Eric, do you have any more? I forgot what it was we were using. This is an altitude.
Diamox?
Diamox. Yeah, Diamox. I'm like,
Interesting.
Eric, you got any Diamox? He's like, hey, yeah, right here. I'm like, why? He's like, why? You not feeling good? I'm like, no, look at Steve. He's messed up. His eyes are rolling. He's getting ready to throw up here. He wants to pass out.
Oh, my God.
So we're just kind of shouldering, keeping him shielded from the guides and everything. And, but one thing about that, too, is when we did hit the summit, and they let us go down on they knew that the 3 of us were fast, and one of the guides came with us. And the faster you run down, all these whatever issues you have just disappear the quicker you get down.
Interesting. Unlike the bends.
Right.
It's
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, which that was the difference with Ecuador with us with one guide. He wasn't testing our oxygen, thank God, because I'm not sure I would have had enough to make it to the, summit. It was a lot of work for me to get up over 20, and it was cold that time. The guide was kind of like, all right. And I wasn't going to accept that we were turning around. There were other people turning around. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
So what happens too at like a higher altitude like that? So that was the first time we had climbed over 20,000 feet, and obviously very cold up there, and we cannot move fast enough to generate body heat. So, which is why you see all the guys on Everest in the one piece, the onesies, that are the puffy suits, down suits, because they are going to move slow. So we were running into that. I have never had as much gear and clothes on as that day, and I needed every piece of it.
Interesting. So our assumption, it's even as cold as it, like if you went back to like 2 weekends ago, as cold as it gets, we can still generate some heat because we're able to move fast enough because oxygen's not an issue. But what you're saying basically is because oxygen's an issue, you can't move fast enough even when you're going uphill to generate enough heat to keep you warm.
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct. Yeah, the day on Chimborazo, night, morning, whatever you want to call it, those 2 hours before sunrise were definitely a huge challenge for me. and I was freezing. Like, Chris is having to rub my quads because my legs were that cold. I've never been that cold here. I couldn't put enough clothing on to keep that part of my body warm. So since then, I've bought and he's bought me enough stuff that I could have sat out there for a while, so I wouldn't have any problems, so that when we do that again, it won't be an issue, or here.
Thicker gauge down.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
They have knickers, nice knickers for girls.
Yeah.
They just zip right on.
Huh.
Yeah. Cool. I had the heat shield gear on. Well, I wasn't moving fast enough for it to be warm. Yeah. So it was definitely, my core was warm, but my legs were not.
Yeah. Makes for a tough day.
Yeah.
All right. And then you've been to Scotland. Do you want to talk a little bit about Scotland?
Yeah, Scotland was pretty cool. Aside from the pouring rain.
I heard you guys saw a sticker somewhere from the podcast.
Oh, we did. Oh, yeah. It was up on Ben Nevis.
Yeah.
Those Scots just love the podcast.
They do. We couldn't believe it.
I'm like, wow, Tracy, check this out. Sticker over here.
That's awesome.
So the West Highland Way is a 96-mile
point to point
through hike, and it ended up being more than that because you walk to your accommodations. So you can choose how many days the hike is in, and we chose 9 nights, 10 days, I think. Yeah. And they'll actually bring your bag. So all you have to hike with is a day pack, which is huge, because I'm not hauling all my gear to sleep.
She's not going to have to haul her hairdryer.
I'm not. I probably would have gotten electrocuted, though, with the amount of rain we had.
Oh, my goodness.
But point to point, so the days really were relatively easy. I don't think we ever had more than like 1,200 feet of gain in a day. The scenery was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it's special.
Yeah, and the people were incredible. Every place we went, but thank God we bought, Chris brought umbrellas. We had
ultralight hands-free umbrellas. Check it out.
Huh.
Oh,
hands-free,
my God.
Ultralight.
That's funny.
And if you go back, you might even, if you looked at some of our posts, you should be able to see them. Game changer.
Yeah.
Because we weren't heavy with all the weight of the water. You get in and your stuff is wet, but it's not as soaked as if the backpack was collecting all that water.
You could take pictures, no problem.
Right. I was able to take my hands out, take pictures still, take video of the pouring rain.
Yeah, and those umbrellas are generally sort of frowned upon in the White Mountains, and I think the reason is that we're below tree line, and it's just logistically can be a pain in the neck if you're on a tight trail. Yes. But I would assume in Scotland, you don't really have tree line to deal with, right? You're hiking more an open area.
It was really occasional that would happen, and Tracy and I were saying that. We said we could never use these at home. Just because of the width of the actual umbrella. We said we could never use these at home, but there it was great.
And then how do they mount? How do they mount hands-free? They mount on your shoulder, or how does that work?
No, so on the very bottom of the shaft has a loop that you would pass your belt through. Now, on the top of your shoulder pads, they give you a clip for each side. So depending on if you wanted to put your shoulder, the umbrella on your left shoulder or your right shoulder, you just unclip it out of there and switch it over to the other side if the wind shifted or if you turned around.
So what he's describing, Mike, is a parachute.
Yes.
I can picture you guys flying off into nowhere land.
I thought maybe I was going to end up like Piglet, and just holding onto the umbrella.
And the shaft was adjustable too, that you could bring it down if it started getting windy and just have it right over your head down low instead of like a high umbrella. Because it was windy too.
Huh. That's a riot.
It really was a game changer out there. It really was.
Yeah, I've got
Tracy holding onto your foot.
Poppins.
Right. And then I was
singing out there too.
And then you've also been out to Colorado. So, Chris, I want you to sort of weigh in on this question. You know, anytime we get these West Coast people, they're always like, "Oh, you in your small mountains in New Hampshire." Can you just sort of weigh in on the question, like, is the West Coast more like difficult and epic than New Hampshire, or are they equally challenging?
I would say they're equally challenging, and here's the similarities and differences. For the most part, all the gain, the elevation gain, roughly the same. Yep. 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet, whatever, and some less than that too. Where I think the big difference is if you drove, just say you went up Franconia Notch, and you took all the trees off of Flume, Liberty, Lincoln, Lafayette, if you just took all those trees off of there, you would have the same scenery.
Interesting.
You know, you would have the same scenery in their hiking. For what we saw, we had climbed 9 14ers in 2 weeks. 9. Yeah, 9. And from what we saw there, the trails were not difficult. I mean, they were dirt, you know, switchback, a lot of switchbacks, no scrambling that what we had been on. Now there are a few out there that do have, you know, some serious scrambles.
Yeah, because they have different classes.
Right.
So we chose not to do, you know, the higher classes that would be more like a rock climb. Mm-hmm. We didn't bring the gear with
and
us.
The wind was an issue too while we were out there. Oh, yeah. Because we did have somebody, I think he said Capitol Peak, he was willing to come and, you know, guide us on that too. But the wind had never gone lower than 35 miles an hour.
No.
Yeah.
No, there was one.
Windy trip.
Yeah, there was one on Sherman. It had a little bit of a cull, and I kept getting blown over. And I was like, I was getting aggravated because I'm like, the peak is like right there. I can see it. So this group, this super fun people, a group of Mongolians went up ahead of us, and I'm like, she's not very big. I can do that. So I'm like, well, I'm not. So I got knocked down again, and he gets next to me and he goes, crab crawl it. So I'm crab crawling across this spot so that I can get over to the peak. Because once you got to the peak, it wasn't bad.
And not just the peak either. It was maybe about like a 50-foot area where the wind was just whipping over.
Oh yeah.
Once you cleared that area, you were fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was fun. You know, and we did meet some interesting people while we were out there as well.
And also while we were out there too, Tracy looked for the highest accommodations that we could find.
Yeah.
So I think we were always staying at like around 10,000 feet. And, you know, carrying out as soon as we arrived there too, and we knew we were on the second floor of this place. It was all Airbnb that we stayed in.
Okay.
So we were taking our bags up to the second floor, and I'm like, all right, let's get this crap up there and, you know, like just relax. And, you know, one duffel bag in each hand, and you're going up there to the second floor and like really quickly out of breath.
Like,
just out of breath. And, you know, we just knew that, like, all right, this is going to take a couple days.
We're going to be doomed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you take a couple days.
Just like you ran a 5K uphill completely.
Now, what's next for your travels? Do you have any plans to go back to any of the places you've been to? Do you have any plans for new places that you want to visit?
I'm not sure I'm going to be alive long enough to satisfy Tracy's bucket list.
Oh, boy.
I just keep getting a bigger and bigger bucket list. But I do think we're going to go back to the Canadian Rockies.
Okay.
We have friends that are going out there. Gavin is doing the AT, or he says he's attempting, not doing. Hopefully he's doing. And then they're driving.
Interesting. That's an interesting comment.
Well, you know, he doesn't want to say it before it's done.
Yeah,
so
that is interesting.
But he's starting the AT, and then he's going to drive. Him and his wife are driving across country. So we're hoping to meet them back up in Canada, around somewhere between Banff and Jasper, up on that Icefield Parkway, and maybe get a little bit more hiking in. That was probably one of the most beautiful places we have ever been, was the Canadian Rockies.
I bet.
Absolutely unbelievable. It's breathtaking at every turn. It's like the mountain is right there, and they're huge. And they're, you know, the tops are all snow covered.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, that was definitely that was an incredible experience, and Athabasca was an amazing peak as well. There's another glaciated peak. So, as much as I don't like winter, I love the glaciated peaks. They're
A challenge.
A challenge, but they're incredible. They're so beautiful.
Any interest to get out to like Nepal?
Well, we had a trip. Yeah, we had
nodding
we
her head
had
up and
we had
down.
a trip booked. Was it 2 years ago? A year?
No, a little more than a year ago.
And then, with the COVID and everything, and then I think that's when you ended up with a detached retina.
I had a detached retina, so I couldn't be at any altitude. I had to have
She couldn't drive across the Kank. She couldn't drive into Franconia Notch.
So that was actually when
it was too high.
And I couldn't do the hike because we're still recovering from my detached retina.
Wow.
I couldn't do any altitude, and that was even a little bit of a struggle to get there. So, Nepal had to be on hold. Mira Peak was.
Yeah, we had plans on climbing Mara Peak out there.
There's a joke in there somewhere. Captain
No.
Morgan and did you wear a patch for a while?
I know, a little pirate thing. I know, I did. So, there was a lot of jokes because I looked like I had taken a beating.
If you know anything about the recovery for a detached retina too, you have to look down, right? Because that gas bubble that they inject into your eye,
And
you
pressure,
have to keep it at the
avoiding
back. Correct.
lifting and everything. Yeah.
Right.
So she always had to look down. Like we had to put the TV on the floor.
Yeah.
So she could look down at the TV because you can't look up. You have to keep her chin to her chest.
Oh yeah, so I definitely had this pirate thing going at first. I had all this tape, and so we got the captain and the pirate or whatever. I don't know.
That's interesting. Wow. Oh. Jeez. Yeah. How'd you get that injury? Do you know?
I don't.
We have thoughts.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris making you carry his pack or something like that?
He is, he's so abusive. No, I don't know. After my second COVID shot, I had, within a couple months, I had the detached retina. I had fallen and broken my thumb coming down Owl's Head. I have no idea.
Yeah.
They didn't know. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit more learning than I wanted to about that topic.
Well, you mentioned search and rescue. Without going into detail, can you tell us briefly about your experience with that so far, and a little bit about the search and rescue community and just what you've experienced?
Go ahead.
I've really enjoyed it. Just meeting new people, and I just felt I had a bit to offer too, as far as using navigation. If you gave us a point lat and long, using GPS or anything, I just knew that I had something to offer the team, that I've been using GPS since the start of it on the boat. So I just felt that.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I was an asset for that.
Yeah.
And I had planned when I moved up here full time to get on the team as well, and it's been a fabulous experience.
Mm-hmm.
I have thoroughly enjoyed being a part of this team. We hike all the time, and to know that I still can have enough and more than enough in the reserve to go out and still do that, I think just speaks volumes to the community of people that I'm in.
So just a couple quick ones on that too. Tracy and I had just gotten done doing a winter Zealand Bond Traverse, and I turned my phone on because I was keeping an airplane mode when we were hiking, and I turned it on and the siren was going off. Tracy had already put in her application for the team, but had not gone on her qualifying hike. So I said, Tracy, here's a call right here. Now, we had just done 22, 23 miles, whatever it was. I said, here's a call right here. Do you want to go? She's like, yeah. I said, okay, let's go. We're going to head over to Pierce and over between Pierce and Eisenhower. So we made it up to Pierce and, help with a carry down. And she had the patient's backpack on too, in addition to going on the litter. And I think there was another one too. So you actually did two. You were involved with 2 rescues before you actually did your qualifying hike too.
Hardcore. No, it's super cool. That's fantastic.
Oh, one more story though. So when you join,
careful, we got a lot of stories.
It's great. That's what I was looking for.
So when you join the team, they assign you, a mentor, and Stomp happened to be my mentor. So we show up one time. I think it was the very first mission I got called out on, and it was at Garfield. And since I lived close, I was there close, and he had beat me there. So typically the first person would take off and they would head up to be with the patient. The next 2 split the litter and carry that up.
I know where this is going.
So Stomp says,
he
says, I'm headed up right now. He says, you and so grab the litter. Now I had just got done hiking. I think it was Mariah. I had just done 10 miles. I just got done with the hike. And so I had never put the litter on before. This is my first rescue. So the guy, one of the guys, part of the team there, he's rigging up my backpack inside of the litter. I got the litter on, and I'm like, all right, off we go. And I'm tall, and this litter hangs way over your head, and I'm hitting into trees and crashing. And so the patient, I believe, was up around like 3,500. It was above 3,000 feet. Yeah. And so I'm going along and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to end up in this litter pretty soon. I said, Stomp's going to be up there already. He knows I have half of this litter and I cannot pass this thing off to anybody else. So members of the team, they're coming along. They're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing good, man. We're going up there. And I remember Dan Bagan, he's like, hey, Chris, he's like, anytime you want to take that. And I got my altimeter on my watch and I'm looking at it. I'm like, we're at 29 right now. I'm like, I got about 600 more feet up. I'm like, I can do this right here. And so I just remember showing up and like, Stomp wasn't even aware who carried up the other half of that litter or even me. Like, I could have passed that thing off. But, just one of those things that's like, I got to get it up there. He's going to be waiting for me.
Oh, that's silly. It's so funny. Yeah. We didn't tell you that we haze you. Making you carry everything up. That's great.
Apparently, that's the first one. I'm, carrying the litter and carrying the patient's backpack.
Oh, yeah. So many stories. Well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah.
Great assets, for sure. We have one sponsor, and this is CS Instant Coffee. Zero waste instant coffee that comes in compostable packets. Perfect for the trail and home. Each packet makes about 20 ounces of coffee, so you can take one of them on an overnight trip, and it makes 2 pretty good sized cups of coffee. Put it in your backpack, find some hot water, and you're good to go. Learn more by going to our show notes or Google CS Instant Coffee at www.csinstant.coffee.
Researchers claim, this isn't really search and rescue news, but it's noteworthy. Researchers claim black bear population growth is directly correlates to Bigfoot sightings. So essentially, if you live in an area where there's a lot of black bears, if that population grows, then the black bear, if there's a lot of black bears, then you'll see a lot of Bigfoot sightings, apparently. I feel like New Hampshire doesn't have a lot of Bigfoot sightings, though, so I don't know how true that is.
That's interesting. I mean,
wait till next weekend now that you brought that up.
Yeah, they're all waking up, right?
Yeah, I mean, on trail, I've seen a handful of bears, and some of them are the size of a black lab, and others are the size of a refrigerator. I guess that would be part of the factoring.
Yeah, so I guess keep that in mind. If it's a big black bear season, maybe you'll see more Sasquatch. The other article that I pulled here, Stomp, is Mike Keene had sent this over to me as well, but I saw this floating around the internet. There's a phenomena known as third man factor. So this is situations where you might have like 2 or 3 people that are like getting lost. I think this was originally written about Shackleton in Antarctica. Basically, if you like 1 or 2 people are sort of desperately fighting for life, a third man factor is when somebody appears to be with you, that sort of gives you the motivation to keep going in order to save your life. And then you sort of compare notes and say like, oh yeah, do you remember that person with us that sort of urged us to move forward? And then it turns out that like that person didn't actually exist, but it's basically a ghost to save your life.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have heard of something similar ringing a bell around that kind of thing.
Guardian angel.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, let's Stomp, like me and you, when we hike together, we have this like, we pretend that there's this guy Jimmy Chaga with us, but he's never actually with us, so he's our third man.
You just have his voice in your head.
Yeah, he's not a real person.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. But anyway, moving on to some national news here, Stomp. So another one on Mount Baldy. So this is another incident where a hiker dies after a 700-foot fall on Mount Baldy. So I don't know what's going on in this mountain, but it seems like it's just bad news.
It's in the news every week. Yeah,
You'd think
every week.
that people would just stay off that mountain at this point.
Yeah, this story was what, like a 700-foot slide or something of that nature?
700 foot. So I don't know if it was the same one where the influencer lady fell or if it was another one. But rescuers rushed to this injured woman on January 8th after she had fallen down again. So it's just, additionally, people just seem to be, really having issues in this mountain here.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, this is a new one, actually. But, yeah, well, we'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure. There was talk about trying to institute a permitting process, so that's probably in the works at this point.
Yeah, it could be. And I don't know if they've ever found that actor that went missing either. I haven't seen any news articles about him being found.
No, me neither.
All right, and then...
Surprised they don't institute something like guides mandatory. Any of the large peaks in Ecuador, it's actually required that you take a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, or some sort of a fixed rope system across that dicey section where people seem to be getting in trouble. I don't know how viable it is, but they'll figure something out there. Yeah. All right, so Stomp, this next one. We stay in California here. So Ruth Warrenecki, 40 years old, had climbed a California peak when she slipped on ice and fell, according to a San Bernardino Sheriff's Department official who called her survival a miracle. So this is a Colorado woman. She's fortunate to be alive after she fell during a Christmas Eve hike in the San Gabriel Mountains. So 40 years old, she had summited Cucamonga Peak in California and was headed back down the mountain when she slipped on a patch of ice and fell about 200 feet. She's an experienced hiker, but she suffered a broken neck and a severe head wound and facial lacerations. So she was able to walk about 150 feet to a nearby clearing in order for her to meet up with a rescue helicopter. Helicopter had some issues with high winds. So the hiker actually said that she had to hold her broken neck to keep it stable during the walk. And they basically said that she's lucky that she survived this. Tough lady.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
It's an unusual story.
Yeah. I guess she was camping with friends and then she doesn't really remember the fall. Luckily, they were able to send out a GPS coordinates to rescuers to find her. And there was another nearby hiker that was able to activate their Garmin inReach to help with getting a rescue team there. So, but they didn't have any choice. Basically, she was 150 feet away from the only clearing where they could access her with a helicopter. So she just had to walk on her own. There was no other choice.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty badass.
At least it was only 150 feet.
Yeah.
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 Amazing what you can do when you don't have a choice.
Exactly. So, next article here, Stomp. 2 hikers were rescued in Death Valley after sliding down a hill due to icy conditions. So this is on February 1st. 2 men slipped off of the Telescope Peak Trail while crossing a steep and icy drainage. And this news article actually has the footage from the helicopter finding them, and then the rescue team going down in the basket to pick them off. So pretty interesting footage. I'll link in the show notes, and I'll link in Facebook as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You never really associate Death Valley with icy, steep conditions. I always associate it with blistering heat. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, but I know the canyon, I've been to the Grand Canyon, it was below freezing, at the start. And then you're talking about over 120 degrees by the time you hit the bottom and you're climbing back out. So, that
widespread.
Yeah, it just does a number on people. And then if it's, if you have those icy conditions at one point in the day, you're not prepared for it.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, that's interesting is these guys actually were able to call for a rescue using a cell phone connection. So I always picture Death Valley being like this, remote place that has, nothing going for it, but they were able to call on a cell phone. So,
yeah, literally a dead zone.
Yep. So, and then this next story here is also in Death Valley. So loud sounds led a lost hiker to safety after an 18-mile trek through Death Valley maze. So this lost hiker trekked his way out of a maze of trails in California's Death Valley National Park by following loud sounds which were coming from nearby park rangers. So this guy was from New Jersey. He was out there on Sunday, February 5th, when he set out to hike, I guess, Wild Rose Peak Trail near the 9,000 foot snow-covered summit with a hiking club. So he opted to fall behind the group. Again, don't separate from the group. He started experiencing head and body aches. They agreed they'd wait for him while the group finished up the hike, and then they'd walk back down the trail. He got cold, straight off trail on his own to warm up, and then he was lost. He ended up trekking uphill to a ridge, and the group basically assumed that he had hiked out, and at the same time, they realized that he was lost. So helicopter search was initiated, and this guy ended up walking like 18 miles in total.
Just wondering why he decided to walk uphill.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Typically, you'd right, they go down into drainage.
So it says, but when he got cold, he strayed back down the trail on his own to warm up. Only he lost the trail and instead descended to drainage. Interesting.
Yeah. Stomp, this next story I pulled, this is an old story from going back to 2016 and 2018. And I referenced this in the beginning of the show. There was this guy who has a YouTube channel, which is called High on Life. And it's one of these like influencer YouTube channels. And I don't know who owned it, if this guy was one of like a group or people or whatever, but there was an incident in 2016 in Yosemite where a group of Canadian visitors got off of the boardwalks and they walked into the geyser area that was off limits. And a bunch of people took pictures of them and it made the news. They ended up arresting the guys. They basically just ignored people telling them like, hey, you have to stay on the boardwalk. And they were taking videos and pictures and all this stuff. So this is the early days of like YouTube channels and stuff. So they got arrested in 2016. One of the gentlemen ended up, actually, I think 3 of the gentlemen ended up going to, one of them pled guilty and got like, I think, a suspended sentence. 3 of them pled not guilty, went to trial and ended up having to do a week in jail. And then fast forward 2 years later, the same group of people ended up, they were hiking in British Columbia on a, you guys may know this, it was a waterfall called Shannon Falls. and they were hiking on Shannon Falls. It's like this really steep waterfall, hundreds of feet high. They ended up slipping and dying. So this guy ends up getting arrested in Yosemite for ignoring the rules, walking off the boardwalk. He then proceeds to, like, 2 years later, climb up this British Columbia Shannon Falls, and him and two of his friends ended up falling off of these waterfalls and dying. So this guy was pretty reckless doing stuff, and it looks like the YouTube channel was this, like, kind of YouTube channel where they're jumping off of cliffs and doing all this crazy adrenaline stuff. So, but it's just interesting to me that, like, this guy would get arrested doing something so reckless and then end up, ultimately dying doing, doubling down on something even more dangerous.
High on life.
Yeah. So I'll link the articles, but I just thought that, social media personality. So
Yeah.
I think these people that want to go on social media and get clout by pushing the envelope, like, they got to think twice about this stuff, because you can slip and fall and die very easily.
It's a good reason to stay off social media.
True. And then that's it. We don't have any local search and rescue, thank God, Stomp. We only have a bunch of people crashing snowmobiles. So I think there's been 6 or 8 incidents that I've seen, but we don't need to get into it.
Yeah, and the primary reason for those several stories was due to the ice that's starting to come through the trails. So people are just whipping around corners, hitting ice, and sliding right off. So,
Yep. But that's it.
Wow,
Lil Squirt,
show.
You did it. Lil Squirt and Captain Chris.
You guys are great. Thanks for coming by and joining us. It was a lot of fun.
No, it was definitely fun.
Yeah, so cool.
We listen to your show every week, Mike.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support.
Oh, yeah. No, we really enjoy the interaction between you two guys, too. Like, we laugh. We'll put it on for these long drives over to the eastern side. I'm like, oh, what episode are you on? And I'm like, have you heard the latest yet? I mean, you guys do have good interaction between yourself, too.
Yeah, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, we laugh.
That's good. Yeah, it's come a long way. Geez, we're creeping up on episode 100, so you guys are 93.
Ooh.
And there is no 100th guest lined up at the moment. If there will be, we don't even know. We're just sort of stumbling into the 100th episode, but that's okay. It's all good.
Yeah.
No, it's been really enjoyable, too, listening to you guys.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So to be able to be a part of that, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. And we'll have you back again, I'm sure.
Oh, you know where to find us.
No neighbors.
Right up the road.
Yeah. All right. Until next time.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. And I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.